Hello everyone, welcome back to Fulton County Library System's book stream for tweens. My name is Abby and I am the Youth Services Librarian at the Buckhead branch. So it's a new week, which means we get to start a new book, and I chose Ghost Squad by Claribel A. Ortega. Now I chose this book because it's October, it's spooky season, and I wanted to read a book about ghosts. I wanted a creepy crawly book. And this definitely delivers on that, but in a really unique way. So it follows mainly this girl named Lucely, who lives with her father in St. Augustine, Florida. And she has a big Dominican family. But the twist is that all of her family members, other than her dad, are all ghosts. So even though the way the writer describes the house, it's filled with all this bustling activity and all these different, voices of different relatives, to an outsider's perspective, it just seems like it's just Lucely and her father. That's it. So I think that's a lot of fun and pretty unique. Also partly because even though this is, a ghost story, there's paranormal activity, super action-packed plot, really at its core, it's a book about family, it's about her relationship with her father, it's about her Dominican heritage, and it's just a lot of fun to read while also being a very personal story. Another element to that is that it doesn't shy away from the fact that oftentimes in a single parent household, it's not always smooth sailing, particularly from a financial perspective. In fact, when I pick up reading, I'm going to start at the third chapter, and the second chapter. And what had just happened is a man from the bank paid them a visit and told them if they don't pay back a certain amount of money by the end of that month, which happens to be October, they will lose the house, basically. Now, her father runs, ghost tours all around St. Augustine, Florida, where they live. And it's just not bringing in the same amount of money as it used to. So at least at the very beginning, that really is like the central point of conflict for Lucely, is, she overhears that conversation and, it's kind of upsetting. And she really just wants to do what she can to help her dad, because at the fundamental core, they really are a team. So I'm going to pick up reading in chapter 2. Chapter 2. When will I get spots like yours on my hands? Lucely softly pinched the paper-thin skin on her abuela's hand, and it sank back slowly. Once the remnants of the previous night's storm had cleared up, Mama Teresa seemed to be back to herself. No more flickering. When you're old, like me, and even your butt is full of wrinkles. They both giggled, heads huddled close together as they sat on the front porch. When Simon, her dad, came jogging around the corner, Mama Teresa smiled softly and evaporated like steam from the warm milk she used to make to help Lucely fall asleep. In her place was a firefly dancing around Lucely's head. She imagined what it must look like if someone were to see her talking and giggling with a firefly alone on her porch, but Lucely was used to being the weird kid. "Mama?" he asked wistfully. Lucely nodded. The tour group is already in the cemetery taking pictures of the old church. You remember our plan? Lucely loved helping her dad out with the Luna Ghost Tour on the weekends because she got to play a ghost, and she'd been looking forward to it all week. I'm going to hide behind the Varela mausoleum and blast ghost sounds from my phone. Right, but not before I give the cue. Remember, it has to go perfectly this time. Mr. Vincent wasn't bluffing when he said he was coming tonight. Simon hardly ever lost his cool, but tonight Lucely could tell he was nervous. Her father still hadn't admitted that they were in danger of losing their home, and if Mr. Vincent did show up and tonight went well, they might get an extension. She may have only been 12, but she wasn't a dummy. She just wished her dad trusted her with the truth. "When have I ever let you down, Dad?" Lucely said. "Wait, don't answer that." He wiped the sweat from his brow, but more dotted his dark brown skin a second later. "It's just really important, Shula." Lucely smiled and nodded. They were a team. She looked out for him, and he looked out for her. It was how it had been since forever, or at least since her mother had walked out on them and never looked back. Tonight's tour was taking place at the cemetery, a short walk from their house, so when Lucely had finished getting ready, she headed out, using her phone's flashlight to avoid tripping over any gravestones. Tucked behind the crypt of the Varela family, Lucely waited, listening for her father's voice. Despite the cool autumn breeze, sweat trickled down her forehead. Her favorite part of the tour was about to begin. Beams of light cast long shadows from the tombstones surrounding Lucely's hiding place. As the tour group approached the mausoleum, all hushed tones and nervous laughter, Lucely queued up the spooky audio recording on her phone. "And here we have the crypt of the Varela family." Her father's slightly accented English resounded in the dark. "Just a few more seconds," she told herself, "and these people are in for the scare of their lives." Her cheeks hurt from smiling, giddy with anticipation. This family was quite prominent in the 1800s, but they had a dark secret. Simon kept walking, and the group felt eerily quiet. She couldn't see her father, but could imagine how he looked right now. One eyebrow hitched, his eyes open wide, his large hands held in front of him dramatically. He always knew how to sell a story. That was for sure. One by one, the Varela children began to fall ill and die, except the doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with them. It's rumored that their mother, Dolores Varela, had been poisoning them all along. The group gasped in sync, almost as if they'd rehearsed it. "It is also rumored," Simon paused, walking toward the side of the crypt so he was now in full view of Lucely, "that the spirits of the children can be seen wandering this very cemetery, calling out." Lucely suppressed a giggle. Here it was. For their mother. The moment the words left her father's lips, Lucely pressed play on her phone. "Mama!" The voice carried through the darkness, coming from the camouflage speakers they kept hidden throughout the cemetery. Screams erupted from some of the more superstitious, and Lucely had to stifle a laugh with her sleeve. One of the patrons, an elderly woman who reminded Lucely of her abuela, stood near the group, completely unfazed. She turned and looked right at Lucely, who could now see her more clearly. The woman flickered, her eyes glowing a bright white. The face Lucely knew as if it were her own was now contorted with terror. "Mama!" she yelped. Her grandmother materialized before her, eyes wide. "Lucely, they're coming," Mama's voice quivered. She grasped Lucely's wrists with hands as cold as ice, but her abuela's hands were never cold. "Who's coming? What's wrong, Mama?" Lucely's breaths came in short jabs. She took a few quick steps toward her grandmother and out from her hiding place. "Don't forget me, Nina. Stay strong." Lucely's phone fell to the ground and abruptly stopped the recording. This was all wrong. Stop, Mama, please, Lucely called out. She was now in full view of her father and the tour group. They groaned, clearly annoyed that the gag had been exposed. Lucely spotted Mr. Vincent first, who looked disappointed. Her father did not look happy. No! Mama wailed in a voice so terrifying that even Lucely shrank away. Mama held her hands up against the air as if someone was trying to hurt her. Please, Mama, somebody help her, Lucely screamed, throwing rocks in the direction of the invisible threat in front of her grandmother. But Lucely was the only one who could see her. Mama Teresa rose above the trees around them before diving straight down and right through Lucely's body. It was painful and too cold, like being dunked into a tub full of ice. Lucely fell to the ground, her body trembling like the aftershock of an earthquake. From her throat came a sound, low and gurgling. Lucely, it said in her grandmother's voice, a darkness is approaching. You have to run. Muffled screams, her father's voice telling her it would be okay, his warm breath above her, the smell of cinnamon, that blue fabric softener he always used too much of. Poppy, I'm sorry, she croaked. Then there was only darkness. The soft glow of moonlight filtered through Lucely's bedroom window as she regained consciousness, feeling the familiar weight of her father sitting at the foot of her bed. The room twirled around her as she sat up, like she had been doing somersaults down a hill. Ow! Lucely held the back of her head. Here. Simon handed Lucely an ice pack, and she held it to the tender bump that had formed where she fell. The memories came tumbling back. The tour, Mama, the angry patrons. What a mess. Is Mama... Lucely started, but knew her dad had no way of knowing. She looked next to her bed, but there were no fireflies in the mason jar. She would have to wait until everything stopped spinning to go out to the willow tree and ask the other ancestors. Simon's phone rang then, and before he could even bring it up to his ear, a shrill voice erupted from the other side. He stepped into the hallway, and Lucely waited till he exited completely before taking a tentative step out of bed. Whoa! The room lurched around her, but after a few careful steps, she was able to make it to her door, where she could listen to her dad's phone call. I apologize, Miss, Simon said, the muffled voice cutting him off. Yes, of course. I will be refunding everyone on the tour. I do apologize about the incident during the tour. I understand it's your right to leave a review, but is that really necessary? Simon sighed. I will have the money back to you first thing in the morning. Again, I apologize, and the woman hung up on him. What a bag of rats. Lucely scrambled back into bed and pulled the covers over her legs just as her father came back into the room. Close call. Who was that? She asked. Her father sank down next to Lucely. I had to refund tonight's tour. Lucely knew he was trying his best to keep his voice calm, but this was a huge deal. The proceeds from one tour alone was a lot of money for the Lunas. Lucely couldn't even imagine how far back this would set them. Simon rubbed a hand across his forehead, the bags under his eyes darker than usual. What happened on the tour was not your fault, okay? But it was her fault. Lucely's entire body went numb as she saw the defeated look in his eyes. She would do anything to take back what had happened earlier that night. Lucely twisted her hands, wrestling with the thought of telling her father what had happened with Mama. She knew the story would upset him, but she couldn't keep something like this from him. Simon listened intently as Lucely explained, and then he put his hands on her shoulders. He looked almost relieved. That must have been really scary for you, Luce. I'm just glad you're okay. Do you know if Mama is all right? He asked. I don't know. I hope so. Lucelli's stomach sank. The last thing her dad needed was another reason to worry. She had seen a video on YouTube once about stress being a silent killer, and she didn't want to be the reason her dad kicked the bucket. He gave her shoulder a light squeeze as he stood, straightening the portrait of Enriquillo on the wall before retreating to his office for the night. Sweet dreams, Luce. Night, Dad. Lucelli brought her knees to her chest, fighting back tears and trying her best to ignore the headache that was coming on. She would not let Mr. Vincent take their home away from them, and she had to figure out what was happening to her fireflies. Whatever it took, she had to make this right. All right, so that's the end of the second chapter. I think it sets up a lot of the stuff that's taking place throughout the book between, dealing with her father and the financial struggles, as well as what's going on with her grandmother and the other ghosts that live with them. But that's all I have for you today. Tune in tomorrow where we start discussing the author, Claribel A. Ortega, and then remember to send in some of your fan art for Fan Art Friday. All right, I'll see you guys next time. Remember to like and subscribe. Bye.